I went to a naturopath after several weeks of trying to figure out, what is going on and how can I work with this? And she was like, I could do all of these different tests, and you probably will test positive for Lyme. And I think you have something happening with your nervous system. And I think
Wow.
you should try this journey first instead of all of this other stuff.
I suspect I don't have to tell you how terrifying it can be when your body suddenly seems to break. It's like you can't sleep, you can't eat, and your nervous system feels like it must be completely upside down. And it's not only the symptoms themselves, but the fear around all of this and the loss of control in your life and the sense really that life as you knew it has collapsed. But here's the great news. We see time and time again in the recovery stories on this channel that even from that place, that recovery is absolutely possible. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and this space is where recovery stories meet the latest science to uncover what makes the difference with conditions like ME/CFS, Long COVID, and beyond. And today I am so excited to be joined by the incredible Simona Irwin over in Toronto, Canada. She is so many things. She is a mindfulness teacher, a neuroplasticity coach, a somatic practitioner, recovery program founder, and more. And she has spent a long time helping countless people reconnect with the body's intelligence, even in the hardest moments. And what makes her story even more powerful is that she's lived this journey herself, facing insomnia and POTS and dysautonomia, anxiety, and what seemed to be the collapse of her health while she was a busy CEO and the mother of two young children before finding her way through to full recovery. So, in this interview, it's packed with so much great stuff. Simona shares how a single doctor's insight shifted her path to recovery entirely, and why hope was the first essential step, and how learning to work with fear, not against it, became the foundation of healing. We talk about so many things. We're going to talk about acceptance, the trap of trying to control every detail of your recovery, and the surprising lessons that come from insomnia of all places, and what you can do if you're facing insomnia to start to move through it. This conversation is real and raw and full of the kind of wisdom that only comes from lived experience combined with working with so many others and supporting them on their recovery journey as well. So much great stuff coming in this interview, so let's dive in. Simona, incredible to have you here with us today. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I know you do so much amazing work now with people who are facing a whole variety of challenging health conditions and journeys. We're going to get into all of that and what you're finding most effective. But I know that you also have your own personal journey with all of this. And I know that all of us always appreciate hearing a bit about that, what you went through that brought you to this work and that helps you understand it from a personal perspective, as well as a professional perspective.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I love about doing this with you is that I watched your channel when I was going through my journey, and I know how important these recovery stories are, and like these little bits of hope that just make such a big difference in people's journeys. So, my story, there was like many periods of illness throughout my life, but a really significant one happened right at the beginning of COVID. And I fell into that, classic perfect storm where one day I felt like I was well enough. And then I took an antibiotic. And then the next day, it was like everything in the world just broke all at once.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I was not sleeping. I couldn't eat. My whole nervous system was like upside down and backwards, and vestibular issues, and POTS, and dysautonomia, and
Wow.
insulin levels all over the place. And um, so it was like a huge shock to me because I'm the mom of two kids and I was running a busy like corporate business. I was the CEO of an infant formula company. And it was COVID. So then that was all in flux too. And we were all home and homeschooling. So it was all of a sudden kind of my body just broke. and I had no idea what to do um, and I was really so lucky from what I hear from so many people that I went to a naturopath after several weeks of trying to figure out, what is going on and how can I work with this? And she was like, I could do all of these different tests for you and I could put you through all of this and you probably will test positive for Lyme and all of these different things. And I think you have something happening with your nervous system. And I think
Wow.
you should try this journey first instead of all of this other stuff. And so that was the beginning of my step into the world of neuroplasticity, and everything that kind of came from there.
That is incredible that you came upon somebody so quickly that
Mhm.
saved you. I was just the reel was going through my head of what that would have saved me had I had that conversation so early from the
Yes.
start. Most people by the time they get on this path have accumulated 12 different diagnoses and are taking
Mhm.
all of these supplements to try and address all of them separately and they feel like their whole
Yeah.
body's shutting down. But okay, so it's a gift, I think, to hear that so early on. But
Yeah.
many of us, I know I've said, and many people I interview have said that I don't know if I would have been ready to hear it that early on because it doesn't really sound like the answer, the solution to something so significant, so physical, so debilitating. So when you heard that, what did you think?
Yeah, so at that point, I felt pretty desperate. And because I had been in the natural and organic world with my work for so long, and the first time I was sick in my 20s and went through a big functional medicine piece, that took 3 or 4 years to kind of come out of,
Mm,
which now, of course, I recognize again as the kind of the first nervous system dysfunction round. So there was a willingness in me, but I agree with you that there was this like, this is physical. And I had people saying, like, oh, it's COVID and you've got all this pressure, and, maybe that's a part of it. And I was like, there's no way, like, this is 100% physical because, of course, it all expresses physically. And
yeah.
so it was hard. I couldn't even look at a screen at that point. I couldn't hold my phone in my hand. I was sensitive to every smell and sound and light and technology. And I was like, well, this seems really bizarre. And I'm going to watch these videos and I'm going to start to do this practice. And it gave me, I went through many different programs and each one gave me a little bit of something. But
Mhm.
I think that first one gave me hope of, okay, other people have experienced this and there is a possibility to get out of this. And for me, that was so essential.
And I think that's really step one, isn't it, in all of this? You need to
Yes.
find the hope. A piece of you has to believe that this is possible because it takes a lot to try these different things, to invest the time, the energy that is hard to find when you're going through all of this and feeling so terrible. But yeah,
Yeah.
when you've got that spark there, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point.
Yeah. It was, that first piece for me was the hope. And then it became this discipline of this practice. And I think that supported me in terms of just having structure and a way to give my mind a job that was not just obsessing on symptoms and ruminating on symptoms, which of course I
Yeah.
did plenty of too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really, it helped me and it helped me to a point because there was a point in that journey, the original program I worked with, it was a lot of just like, like notice what's happening and choose differently.
Mhm.
And that was like just right at one point of the journey. But then eventually I noticed like, okay, I'm really like turning away from this again and again. And something about this is not feeling right. And there was new symptoms and more symptoms bubbling up. And I developed a wild insomnia where I slept for maybe 30 minutes a night for many, many
Oh.
months. Um, and then I started to do a different type of work. So for me, I fell into more of like inner work, which I thought I had been doing my whole life. I had a
Mhm.
lot of complex trauma growing up, and I had been in decades of therapy and like all sorts of training and many different holistic modalities. And for whatever reason, it helped me be able to have the life that I had, but it actually never got to the roots of, some of the things that were happening in me. And so I fell into another program. And through that, I really started to unearth like what is going on and how was I living my life and what is trying to be expressed through these symptoms. And even that made me mad because I was like, nothing's trying to be expressed through these symptoms. Like, and like, this is magical thinking. And like, all the push pull that we all have as we work with such debilitating conditions.
Yeah.
But then I started to get better and better and better and really found for me at the core of everything was fear of living, fear of not living, fear of being authentic, fear of expressing my true self. And so that became the piece that really brought me through the journey in the end.
Yeah, I think if step 1 is hope, step 2 is starting to understand fear's role in all of this. I guess
Yeah,
it's massive.
it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said a few things in there that really stood out to me that I think are going to resonate for viewers. One, I was laughing a bit because it reminded me of I just came from this conference that was all about mind body healing and lots of people there who had their own journeys with it. And someone I was talking to said, I'd watch the recovery interviews on your channel, and sometimes I just wanted to punch the people. Not that anyone wants to punch you, but we don't always want to hear this. Like I don't want to listen to my symptoms, and it just all can be a bit aggravating and infuriating when it you're going through such an insane amount of things. So I just for those of you watching and listening, I just want to validate that, we've all been there and it can be challenging to hear these things and you're going through so much. So yeah, we hear you, we see you. And then the other piece though was also about sleep. So sleep comes up so much. And when you're not sleeping, when you have chronic insomnia,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, even if you're not facing anything else challenging in your life, that makes everything feel impossible. Like it's so hard to function when you're not sleeping properly.
Yeah.
So, were you able to how did you cope and move through that phase that you were going through because it had to be incredibly difficult? And then did you find things that helped you turn it around, or is that something that resolved itself as everything else started to resolve itself?
Yeah. Such a good question. So yeah, the sleep piece came in for me around. I mean, it began with a lack of sleep. Like when the perfect storm happened, there was like a big period of not sleeping. And then I kind of got a bit of sleep back. And then maybe
Mhm.
6 months in or so, this incredibly intense insomnia started. And it was extremely hard, like being a mom, trying to function,
Can
all of these
imagine.
things, and like you said, it creates a whole new round of symptoms. It creates a lot of mental symptoms. It
Mhm.
creates a tremendous amount of fear because, everything you see and hear is like sleep is so important. If you don't sleep enough, you're gonna die and your cells are doing this and all of these
Yeah.
things. And so it took this tremendous effort to be like, okay, like this is what's happening. I'm not choosing to not sleep. And so, I'm going to have to find my way through this. Um, and so for me, that, the gift of having that symptom really brought me to working with fear specifically, because for me, fear was keeping that symptom alive, and the fear, it was like these images of me not sleeping and getting worse. And so then I'd be trying to fix sleep, and I had a 3-hour bedtime routine at one point, and everything was controlled and it has to be just so,
Um,
and the blue light glasses and every light dimmed, and
yeah.
everything you could imagine, and tried every sleeping medication. None of them worked for me. Um, and then eventually I found exposure therapy, and I found CBTI, which is specifically for insomnia. And I
Okay.
started to work with the thinking that was going along with it. And it's pretty quickly after that, after I really understood and I was really willing to work with the fear and the stories, then I started to slowly get my sleep back.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredibly helpful. Thank you for sharing that because so
Yeah.
many people face it. And you're right, it becomes you become obsessed with it, understandably, because it's so hard to function without it. And you know how important it is. So now every minute of your day, I'm even thinking of times when, like my husband would turn the kitchen light on too bright
Yeah.
before bed. And I'd go into a panic. I'm like, no, I'm not going to sleep. How many times have I told you not to put that light on? I can't have light. Like you just become obsessed. Like it's
Here's
the kitchen light is on. My world is over. But that
100%.
how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so
Yeah.
limiting, part of what I understood as I walked through this journey was when people were like, "What do you really want? Who are you? What is your authenticity?" And for me, it was always this desire that I've had since I was really young for this like freedom, this like wide
Mhm.
open freedom. And what I noticed was what was happening to me was, I had created my life all around control and all
Mm,
around keeping things small. And then when I got sick, it was like that, times 1,000. It was, I'm going to control my food, the light,
mhm.
people, smells, sounds. And it was
Mm.
just like life was
Yeah.
becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, thinking that if I can just get it right, then I can finally relax and then I'll get better. And it took me a long time to realize that the way out is actually with the discomfort and actually stepping back into life incrementally, slowly, in small ways, but being able to move with life and start to live the life that I want, and then deal with and work with what comes up as I try to do that.
I love that example. That definitely resonated. And, many of us, myself included, I really needed to control my environment before I had CFS. And you're right, then it became closely linked to survival for me to control everything in my environment. So that high alert, that fear goes into overdrive.
Yes.
Um, and I want to stay on the sleep topic just a little bit longer because it is something that comes up so much and it really is a challenge for so many people. So you talk about the fear, letting go of control. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? If someone's in this right now, they're like, what can I shift or what could I start to think differently or do differently to help me approach this in a way that will help to resolve this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's all counterintuitive to what we're doing. So the first thing is we accept that in this moment, we're not sleeping well. So that's like the
Yeah.
first piece. And so instead of, coming to this like, okay, I'm going to do one more thing and it's going to fix my sleep and then finally I'm going to be better. The first thing I really recommend is how can we get comfortable with the fact that you're not sleeping right now? And what can we do to start to meet whatever you need to just accept that and stop fighting it just for now? And then once we can start to like let this push pull, this fight that we're having internally go, then we can start to look at, okay, what's coming up around bedtime? What's coming up in your body, and what's it telling us? And one of the journeys that I walk with people a lot is that what's coming up in our bodies around our symptoms are our like relational wounds. And so what's playing out in how we work with our sleeplessness or how we work with our CFS or whatever it is tends to be often a direct reflection of like deep attachment wounds that we've had, that the system is kind of bringing up in these ways again and again. So with insomnia, a good example is like a repetitive thought like, I'm alone, I'm completely alone, no one understands, whatever it is, and I'm going to
Mhm.
end up XYZ. And so the work that I do with people is we start to look at these thoughts and then we start to work with the sensation and like the unfinished business of that, and then begin through acceptance to say like, okay, like right now we're not sleeping, and like how can we just allow that to be without fighting it? And then what happens? Like it's an experiment. So we kind of bring curiosity. What happens when I start to approach things with that? And what happens when I get out of bed after 20 minutes of not sleeping and have a little corner set up where I just do something else and accept that that's how it is now. And if I yawn, then I try again to go back to bed. And I just stop the fight really with the symptom.
Yeah, it sounds like the approach that we have for overall with these conditions is that Stop fixating on it. Stop trying to fix it. Stop fearing it. The 5 Fs that I can never remember all five, but excessive focus. I might have said that one already. But it's a challenging one. I appreciate you sharing this because when I hear from people that are struggling with this, the desperation that it's like they feel like they're drowning. Like somebody just, I don't know how long I can keep going on like this. Like I'm hearing all these advice and trying to implement all these different things. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
it's a lot.
exhausting, and it's scary, like, frankly, it is scary to not sleep, and it
Mhm.
does create a lot of challenges in the body
Yeah.
and in the mind, and
Yeah.
even, for me, I say to a lot of I said to myself and a lot of the people that I work with, accidentally, we signed up for, like, Zen master training.
Oh,
We
I love that so much. I'm gonna get that embroidered on a pillow.
Yeah.
Accidentally, we signed up for Zen master training. Didn't plan on doing that today.
Yeah.
In the middle of being a CEO and having 2 kids and all of the other things.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden I need to also start
Um,
to identify, what am I thinking? How is it impacting me? And then how can I start to, let my thoughts go and start to be here with the present moment and checking, okay, my thoughts say something terrible is going to happen, but let me look around my room. Here I am with myself. And if I'm not going into the future, am I okay right now? And then slowly we start to turn down the dial on fear, which is the most important dial to turn down. And then the nervous system can begin to settle, and then the body can begin to repair itself. Yeah.
and I know you've said so we know that the component of fear is very important with all of this. And you mentioned turning down the dial on fear, and I love that. But I know you've also mentioned befriending fear as a
Yeah.
part of this. So, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So in my journey, um, gosh, there was so many like different ways that I had to work with fear because I
Mm,
had so much fear from not sleeping. I also had a lot of OCD symptoms. I had just relentless anxiety. Like most of us know, it's like not the type of like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. It's like,
mm,
a waterfall of anxiety pouring through the body all
mm,
the time. And so I really had to eventually stop trying to push it away and get rid of it. And I needed to let it be here. So, in that same approach that I took with the sleep, I had to be like, anxiety is here, panic is here, these terrible sensations are here. And I'm, I've tried the other way of getting rid of it and it's not working. I've tried every medication, every herb, every
yeah.
tapping, everything that I could do. None of it really worked. And ultimately, I needed to just stop and be like, this is how it is right now. And how can I learn to befriend this and become friendly with these sensations and stop running from this discomfort? And it was a slow, incremental process, of course, like all of our processes are. But eventually, I really started to understand that it was, in some ways, it was my friend. And actually, fear for me had been with me since the earliest age from my, complex childhood trauma. Fear was actually one of the things that helped distract me from my family and what was going on. I would kind of get lost in my head. I had like little phobias and things that would come up. And so when I started to see the big picture, I started to see like, oh, this is actually trying to take me away of something that my nervous system thinks is a bigger threat. And so
Mhm,
then as I befriended fear and started and that dial turned down through acceptance and through
mhm.
befriending and through, somatic tracking and the willingness to move forward, then I started to meet what was underneath the fear, which was a lot of unresolved emotion.
Yeah. And after we go from hope to fear, the next stop is the role of emotion, isn't it?
Yep.
On this lovely Zen master journey that we are suddenly finding ourselves on.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it sounds just to make sure I'm understanding, your viewers are understanding, it sounds like the process of befriending fear, 'cause it can almost sound like you like the fear or, it's like good to see you. But it's more about just sitting with it, allowing it to be, not running from it, not constantly like trying to escape it and push it
Yeah.
away, just giving it some space
Mhm.
and seeing that you're okay by allowing it to just be there. And then from there, you can start to get at, where is this coming from? Like, why is this here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And, we all, most of us on this journey, at least, we get stuck on this anxiety compulsion cycle. So we feel anxiety and then we reach for a compulsion to make it
Yeah.
go away, whether the compulsion is, doing a practice, doing breath work, doing
Hmm.
whatever it is to separate ourselves from the intensity that's coming up. And while at some parts of the journey, that's just right. And actually, we need to do it. Ultimately, in the long run, we need to learn how to let those go and just let it be here. Allow the body to habituate and learn that it's a wave that we just have to ride out and that it will come down on its own. We don't have to run in front of it and stop the intensity. We actually have to let the intensity come down on its own.
Yeah, you bring up another good point that a lot of these things that we think of as healthy and good, and because they typically are, like meditation and breath
Yes.
work, can be really wonderful. But if they are just meant to escape or avoid or cope with, things that aren't going well, we think of unhealthy coping strategies being things like, I don't know, TV, alcohol, overeating and all of that. And I guess, okay, maybe if you're choosing one or the other, meditation might be the better choice.
Yeah.
But they can keep us stuck as well if we're not getting at the deeper root of what's going on.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And the beautiful part that I found too is, because we learn to ride this wave and when we learn to be with our aliveness and for unfortunately for us Zen master training students begins with pain or fatigue or fear. But as we make space for that and we learn to let it be here and we learn to let it have its life, then we've carved a pathway. And later in the journey, when we've worked with different things, that pathway opens up for joy and pleasure
Um,
and aliveness. And we learn how to stop holding life back. And we learn it through these difficult emotions, but ultimately at the end of the journey, what comes is a pathway for an incredible vibrance of life to come through. And that's the gift.
yeah.
Mm.
So you mentioned that looking at emotion was another big thing on your journey. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, this was such a big one. And I remember hearing about it again and again. And I was so angry as well. Like, people were like, oh, there's repressed rage. And I was like, no, like, I'm not an angry person. I've never even felt angry. There's definitely no repressed.
Very angry about the not being told that you were angry while adamantly denying that you were angry.
Like, I'm not angry.
Yes.
And I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me. And it took a lot of, practicing. And so fear
Oh,
became my friend because it actually gave me something to practice with. Because eventually
mm,
I could be with fear. And I learned like a disciplined kind of somatic practice. And eventually, like I said, that became a pathway for then other things that I really wasn't skillful with to begin to come up. And so eventually for me, um, I actually how it worked for me with anger is I heard about this and I still didn't feel any anger. I was like a classic mind body person who like was a real people pleaser. And so a lot of my anger was just not felt. I was really numb to it. And so I actually started to practice pretending to be angry. And this was
mm,
like something because I was like, I don't feel it and I'm not getting to it. But I am
mm,
noticing, when the barista gave me the wrong order and I didn't say anything, I felt anxious. And I started to clue in, like, oh, maybe I was angry,
yeah.
and these like little pieces or these things happened with my kids. And all of a sudden I was overwhelmed and anxious and feeling panicky. And then again, I was like, oh, what if I'm not anxious? What if I'm actually just really angry about that? And
Yeah.
so I went up to my room and I was like, okay, I'm going to practice being angry and make an angry face and like hold my fists. And it took a while. I remember it took like a couple months. And then eventually one day something happened and I felt angry. And I was like, oh, this like it's happening for me. And I still at that moment couldn't do anything outwardly with that
Mhm.
anger. I wasn't using it to set a boundary or a limit, and because that was beyond my capacity at that moment, but I could do a practice with it and let it be here and feel it. And then eventually I learned, like, oh, this is an invitation to me to say no to something. And I don't, part of my work was learning that no doesn't mean an end of relationship, or no doesn't mean an explosive conflict like it did in my childhood. And so there was all these little stages of learning to allow myself to emote more and have my expression again in life.
Yeah. I love this, and it's just the themes I've been hearing lately. We talk a lot about the personality traits that many of us exhibit who face these sorts of conditions, and people pleasing is a big one. And at that same conference, I was listening to Christy Yuppie speak. She's incredible, and she was gave the example of the barista. I'm wondering how many of us that resonates for. She's like, for many people, this isn't a big deal, but I go in and they give me the wrong coffee, and it's now like it's a massive thing. She's like, my people pleaser in me wants to take the coffee and leave, and then drink this coffee that I hate.
Yeah,
And how many moments like that do we have in our life where we just shove it down? But then you think, well, no, I'm not angry. Well, no, I don't have repressed rage over coffee. But if you have enough of these moments in your daily life, like it starts to accumulate into something, yeah, that could
yeah.
cause some stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and it's so interesting because it becomes an evolution, so it's like, oh, I might, yeah, end up feeling angry, and or I might eventually, feel the anger at the barista or
Mhm.
whatever it is, but then eventually when we work with it long enough, it just turns into a simple, "Oh, could you make this again for me?"
Right.
And so it's almost like that for me, at least, when there's been so much repression, it's like a little bumpy. It's like, oh, I'm a bit clumsy with, what I'm actually needing or wanting. And so I'm just
Hmm.
feeling angry and avoidance. And, there's associations with that. So all of this is coming up in my system. But eventually, as I work through that, then I just get to be human, notice they got my order wrong, and really
Hmm.
clearly say, "Oh, thanks, but this is incorrect. Can you change it for me?" And it's like,
Yeah.
for some of us, that's, a 6-month journey
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking up for yourself, having boundaries,
Yeah.
being comfortable enough in your skin to, speak, what you need to speak, diffusing many of these situations and not turning it into this massive catastrophe that you now have to figure out what to do about the coffee. It's not such a
Yeah.
big deal anymore. Not
Yeah.
saying that we are 100% Zen masters when we come through this and nothing ever bothers us, but the dial goes down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've been pulling you out of your journey, of your story a little bit here. There's just so many good things to drill down into.
Yes.
But I think I'm making it sound like you had this nice, linear progression of step one, step two, step three, and you just eased your way out of this. But I don't imagine that that's what the actual journey was like.
No.
So, like, was it bumpy, ups and downs, still, frustration, trying things that didn't work? Was there a turning point in all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, so, it was definitely bumpy, it was back and forth, it was all over the
Yeah.
place. I think until I really adopted this deep attitude of acceptance and this attitude of whatever is here is the journey forward. And there was maybe, 13 or 12 or so months into the journey, I really accepted that, like fully, wholeheartedly, that whatever was showing up was just the next part of the healing unfolding, and to trust it and to give it my attention and devotion, like believe it's just right, and to fully and completely accept it and not fight it. And so once I really was able to practice that consistently, still, new symptom, new this, new that, whatever happened, but it no longer affected my nervous system in the same way. And it eventually would come and go, sometimes within a week, sometimes a day, sometimes an hour,
Yeah.
until eventually, after many months of, the the whack-a-mole, like, coming up and popping up and just really no response from me other than caring for myself and, like, helping myself through and paying attention to the emotions that were coming up with it, then eventually things just dissipated. And then, of course, life is still lifey for all of us. But that attitude of, whatever's here is the next thing. And this deep, deep reverence and trust that I found somehow in life and in my nervous system and in the intelligence of it all, that has stayed with me and created a new type of life that I never really imagined was possible for me.
Yeah, I love the way you explained acceptance because we talk about that a lot, how important acceptance
Yeah.
is. But then it can be like, what does that actually mean? Okay, I accept this. I think you said whatever is here is the path forward. Did I
Yeah.
capture, or whatever's here is the journey forward?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's brilliant. I think that's just a great way to just feel and settle into, okay,
Yeah.
whatever this is, whatever it looks like right now, however messy, imperfect,
Yeah.
potentially frustrating it is, like this is what it is. So
This is what it is. And as
this is my journey.
Yeah, as long as we're not, for me, the key point is as long as I'm not traveling to the future, then I'm gonna like what is here right now actually is okay. So if I'm not going into the next hour or the next day or the
Mhm,
next year with those scary thoughts of how this could progress or how it will harm me or my family or whatever it is, those are the things that turn up the dial on fear. And those are the things that just make it so hard to accept. But acceptance is never, I'm not going to do anything about this. It's not,
yeah, it's never
I'm
gonna
going to stop
change.
this.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's more just like today in this moment, this is my reality. So I'm not going to fight it anymore. And when I stop fighting it, I can ask a much kinder question, which is, what do I need to be with this difficult moment? Which is like so much nicer than,
yeah.
how can I get rid of this and how do I get away from this?
Yeah, and you don't realize how exhausting the alternative is to not accept what's going on,
Yeah.
whether it's health symptoms, anything in your life. But just
Yeah.
even when you said that, I felt so much lighter because there's always things like, oh, why isn't that fixed yet? And when am I going to get that sorted? And it's just like, it is this, whatever this is, it is. And you can just exhale and like put it all down and okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, and really trust, one of the beautiful things is it does really feel like the next person or program or whatever it is does show
Hmm.
itself, and, for me, so much of my personal journey was about broken trust in early relationships, and so part of the healing journey became regaining my trust in life and not being the controller and doer of all of life, and instead letting life start to meet me, and
Hmm.
being patient enough to be like, I'm in a relationship with life. These are not my parents, and maybe there's something out there that like does care about me and does love me and is going to bring me what I need. And for me, that's the deep core wound that I feel like so many of us have that we're at odds with life and we've lost our trust and this journey is hard, and I don't know why it is the way it is. And for a lot of the people, myself and a lot of the people that I work with, it restores our trust in life. And we have a more beautiful life after.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're hitting on so many of the core things that I hear people talk about that were so vital for their recovery journey. The
Yeah.
hope, the role of fear, looking at emotions, acceptance, trust. And I believe I heard you mention self compassion as well, because
Yeah.
that's another one that comes up, which
Yeah.
is another one that can sound a bit abstract. And what does that mean? So, what was the role for you of self compassion for you and with the people that you work with? And then how do you do self-compassion? Because it's a verb, it's not a state. So how do you make that happen?
Yeah. It's such a good question. So I remember hearing about self-compassion and I, looked up books and like listened to podcasts and I honestly didn't understand it. Like it
Yeah.
actually didn't make sense to me. Which is interesting because people would have considered me an extremely compassionate, kind person. And I just didn't get it. Um, because I was always trying to run away from what was happening inside myself. And part of it was I was extra compassionate to other people and incredibly
Mhm.
judgmental and hard on myself. And so, one of the things that comes with that acceptance, when I accept what today is or what's happening in my body, then I'm left with, well, this is happening. And then that second question of like, what do I need? That for me opened the door
Mhm.
to self compassion because then I could
Yeah.
really identify I'm suffering. I haven't slept,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and instead of running to 67 more doctors, like, what do I need to get through this day? How can I be kind to myself? Like,
Yeah.
what can I do? Who can I ask for help? Like, what are these like little steps? And again, the help is not like save me, fix me. It's like,
Mhm.
you sit with me because this moment is really hard and I'm going through something difficult. And
Mhm.
so for me, self compassion was like such a learning practice. And I did it both with myself and, I did a lot of inner kind of parts work with myself, just in my own somatic practices. And so again, I needed to practice compassion for the parts that were up, the angry parts or the
Yeah.
scared parts. And so it was this ongoing piece of, yeah, how can I offer that to them? And then how do I offer that to myself? And then the blessing of that became, I became a better mother to my own children too, with this new
Yeah.
level of like, oh, acceptance and compassion and just being here is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful and it really hits on my understanding of it and how I talk to people about it. Is just you just have some some things that you walk yourself through. So instead of saying, "Oh, I should have some self-compassion," what I heard you saying, how I say it as well is that the first step, or how a lot of people say it, is just acknowledging, like, this is hard.
Yeah.
I'm going through something hard right now. This is difficult. Like, this is suffering. This is tough. It's
Yes.
understandable that I would be struggling right now. And
Yes.
then reminding yourself that everybody struggles because it can feel like you're so alone in your struggles and why me and everyone else, especially on social media, looks shiny and happy. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, everybody struggles. It's what
Yeah.
it is to be human. You are not alone in this. Everybody experiences struggle. And just that piece of, yeah, how can I ease up on myself? How can I be a bit kind? Can I forgive myself? Can I lower some expectations? Just ease up a little bit. Give
Yeah.
myself a hug. Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, I love that. And, for me, another piece that might be helpful for people too is, there is when we have the acceptance and we have the self-compassion, then we're also being witnessed in our suffering. And for me, there was something actually really important, as much as I was trying to get away from being sick over and over again. Uh,
Mhm.
for me, in my own journey, there was something important about me acknowledging that, like, I have been hurt. Like, I was
Yeah,
hurt from my childhood, and I presented as such a high functioning person. And it was only when I got really sick was I eventually able to turn to myself and really, I kind of wanted the external world to acknowledge it in different ways, but what I really needed was to turn to myself and say, like, it was really hard and my childhood hurt me. And
yeah,
this is an expression of that for me. And I'm wanting it to be seen. And actually, no one can see it in the way that I can see it in myself and really have compassion and acknowledgement and be like, I see you. That was awful. And like, we can be with that for a bit without skipping over it. And for me, that was another essential turning point of just saying, my body is expressing the pain of my life and it's true
yeah.
and it's real and it wants to be seen and letting it be seen.
So we talk a lot, especially these days, about trauma. It seems to be a very mainstream topic that comes
Yes.
up. We're all deciding what we're supposed to do with it. If we have it, oh wait, we all have it. How much do we have? Is it impacting me today? So for you, was it acknowledging that you went through what you went through as a child, what you needed to move forward on your health journey, or was there more of working through trauma in any specific way? Do you even define it as trauma? What did that insight about your past, how did that impact your health journey?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, there was this piece of acknowledgement for sure. And for me, what I eventually discovered was like in every micro symptom and micro reaction, there was that history, what the unfinished business that I had in my body was showing up in my symptoms.
Mm,
And so there was a lot of repair, and it's kind of that bigger repair that I talked about with life. It's like that broken trust in myself, that broken trust in life. Sometimes I noticed when, like, in some of my big insomnia periods, there was like repetitive thoughts about the, like different it wasn't like connected to a specific trauma memory, but eventually I was like, oh, this reminds me so much of what I felt like when I was little and alone in my room and up at night and hearing fighting or hearing whatever. And so every time, going with that idea of like the way shows the way, or the next step is the next step, it's like, okay, well, this is up. It likely is connected to my trauma. I don't really need to explore it, but I can meet it here as it presents in the symptom. And that's enough for my system to then, integrate and metabolize it. And in the work that I do, we do a lot of it through movement, and we do it just through this deep acceptance and staying
mm.
with, and this trust that the body actually knows how to move through these things when given the right conditions.
I'm wondering also, I'd love to hear your experience and how you approach this with the people that you work with, because we also talk a lot about our relationship with our symptoms themselves
Yes.
and how we think about them, react to them,
Yes.
whether we think about them, react to them,
Yeah.
can impact how long they stick around. So what was your experience and what do you find the most effective with the people that you work with, or how do you guide them through dealing with that? Because it's tough. Most people have such a long list of really intense symptoms and they're moving around and they're new and they can be very scary and they make everything that you do a lot more challenging. And then there's a lot of information about what,
Yeah.
even how you think about them is going to impact things, which can stress you out even more. So it's understandably people struggle. So yeah, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so one of the things that I like right at the beginning of my Befriending Fear course, we talk about this idea of sensitization, which is,
Mhm.
what happens when your body is washed with adrenaline again and again. It creates all sorts of feelings and symptoms and sensations. And, when we put fear on a symptom or sensation, it tends to, keep it around longer. And so all of these pieces are important to know, and to be able to, for me, how I approached it was really this umbrella of I don't actually need to notice and count every sensation or every new symptom that I'm getting. I kind of put it under this umbrella of this is a sensitized system that's got all of this expression and all of this stuff going on. And I'm going to just pay attention to what's here today without needing to label it and without going into a future story about what it means or how bad it could be or part of what diagnosis it is. And of course, this is after, seeing, 10 doctors like we all have. And so at the beginning, it makes sense to go to the doctors, get things
Mhm.
checked out, be medically responsible, of course. But for most of us, eventually we're like, okay, we've done that. And so now, this is coming up. And
Mhm.
instead of trying to fix it or change it, what is it? What is it making me feel? How can I be with it? And what does this feeling and how I relate to it, what is it reminding me of? And often it's reminding us of trauma or loss or challenges, because that's how the brain works, right? We feel something and it reaches back. When is the last time I felt this? Oh, at that terrible moment of my childhood. Okay, I'm going to project an image of this getting way worse. And then that's the loop that we get stuck in. And so the
Yeah.
recommendation I have for people is like, we're going to try to let go of the past. We're going to try to let go of the future. We're going to come here and nourish ourselves right here, right now, with what is true, but without kind of time traveling back and forth, because that often is what keeps us stuck.
Oh, how I wish that I could put you in some sort of time machine and send you back to when I first started facing this condition. This would have been
Yes.
such incredibly helpful information to have. Back then, I hope nobody's still saying this, but we were told repeatedly that you needed to monitor your symptoms. You needed to track them. You needed to have a symptom diary. You had to rate them every day. Like I had like spreadsheets and well, like my post-exertional malaise was a 7 yesterday. What is it today? And then when you have all these numbers, like nothing seems to be getting better. In fact, now we see that that type of
Yes.
fear-based focus makes them worse. So then it spirals. You're like, oh my goodness, now not only am I feeling worse, I have a day by day tracking system to remind me that this is happening. It's just,
Yes. Oh
but
my
wait,
god. Yes.
it never even occurred to me back then that the tracking system might be the problem. They weren't even
Of
related to
course.
me. I didn't see any connection. It felt like the
Yeah.
responsible thing to do. Of course, you're gonna,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like more
yeah,
of that kind of regimented, like, control, and I have to get
yeah,
myself out of this, like, it's me
yeah,
against the world. I have
yeah,
to do it, I have to track it, I have to control it, and it's fascinating and kind of wild that our way out is so much the opposite. It's deep surrender, acceptance, trusting life, letting the hard stuff be here,
yeah,
meeting our needs as it moves through, and trusting that there is like a wave, a journey, a process that will complete itself when given the opportunity. Yeah.
And it also reinforces that mindset of all of these symptoms are coming from different places. So I have 19 symptoms. This means 19 different broken things in my body that I need to figure out how to fix, which is why I need to monitor each of them and see which one is the worst. So I know what I need to, get more interventions for. And it's just, yeah,
Yeah, and
we were way off track back then.
one of the things that really strikes me too, and this is kind of part of the befriending piece too, is like at the root of that too is love. Like it's like some of us became so hyper focused on all of our stuff. And the truth is, of course, we wanted to fix it. But the other truth is like that was how we showed up for ourselves. And that's
Yeah.
how we showed this like deep love for ourselves. And
Yeah,
even
you're
though
right.
it might have been misguided and, in these ways, and a lot of us, who have come through this, in some ways, we raised ourselves in different ways, whether, our families were functional or not, there was some piece that felt like I have to look out for myself. I have to do it all
Hmm.
myself. I have to be perfect. And so we just translate that onto our symptoms and, and we, it's not the solution, but something that helped me was to see like, oh wow, I loved myself so much. I was willing to make
Yeah.
these crazy journals and diaries and spend all of my money and savings, because like I want to live, and like
Yeah.
letting that touch us that we wanted that for ourselves, and that is beautiful. And
Yeah.
there are some simpler, less expensive ways, thank God, that
Yeah.
we can go through now.
I love that so much. That's such an important thing. That's how we were showing up for ourselves, how we were taking care of ourselves. And it applies to so many things. People, we all struggle with something, whether it's, food or alcohol or, some kind of drugs or spending. And we think it's this shameful weakness that we have. But really, it's, step one is just loving that part of yourself that was just trying to take care of you. You're like, you need some comforting right now. How can we show like you're just trying to do the best that you can. So I think that's such an
Yeah.
important part with recovery from these conditions too, because we do all these things, yeah, because we love ourselves and we're trying to take care of ourselves and minimize our suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another understandably confusing one that comes up that I would love to hear your insights on is rest, because we go through these
Yeah.
journeys, and many of us are on a journey of thinking there's 19 things wrong with us, and
Yeah.
then coming to a place of realizing it's not about a multi-systemic organ shutdown.
Yeah.
We're working with fear, we're working with threat assessment systems, our brain, our nervous system,
Yeah.
and that your body is actually structurally fine.
Mhm.
But then you think, well, does that mean that I just push through everything?
Mm.
Or because I know I'm physically okay and I should never need to rest
Yeah.
because there's nothing wrong. So if I feel tired and I rest, I'm giving in. A
Yeah.
tricky thing to navigate and understand. So, how do you understand this and how do you approach this with the people you work with?
Yes, such a good question. Yeah, so for me, the first part is, it's around like the pull of the values. So yeah, what's going to move the needle for me to enjoy my life more? And of course, the next question is like, should I just then do it? And my answer is Yes, but incrementally because we're also building trust, right?
Mhm.
So part of what we're doing, while I in myself as I did the work, I did have to do some belief work around capacity and, oh, this is hurting me, or it's bad to have a setback. And I had to do a lot of inquiry on like, wait, is that even true? Or, am I actually being harmed or am I okay? And still within that, I believe that moving incrementally allows
Mhm.
us to build trust faster in our body with ourselves. So I do think when we have certain values, for me, it was like I'm showing up for my kids. And sometimes I had slept 30 minutes and they wanted to go do something. And my answer was yes. And was I going to, pay for it in other ways? Yeah. But if they asked me to run a marathon, I would say no. But if they asked me to
Yeah.
go to the park down the street, I would say yes, and do it and follow through, and then use my tools with whatever came up after that. And so for me, it looked like these little steps that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, it's less about pushing through and more about like the pull of the heart of how you want to live your life. And then what's the small way that I can do that today? And then
Yeah.
when I gain that trust and see, oh, that setback sucked, but it ended, and okay, well, I believe that now, so now I can do it a bit bigger. And it might happen again, but I trust it. And now I have evidence and I'm going to do it again. And then eventually there will be a day when you're just like, whatever, I'm just doing it now,
Yeah.
and our own internal clock dictates when that day is.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It really aligns with my understanding of all of this. And it's such a big question that comes up from people to me over and over and over again. And I think there's two really important components that I think I was hearing you say as well. Because really, it's almost like treating a phobia, right? We're saying your body's okay and it's physically fine, but your threat assessment systems have decided that so many things in life are dangerous. So it's trying to keep you safe. So I
Yeah.
say, like, if you were afraid of the water, and
Mhm.
then someone told you, gave you the science of why water was safe,
Mhm.
you wouldn't just go drop in the middle of a rocky ocean and be like, this is fine, I'm okay. You would still
Yeah.
start by probably looking at a picture of the ocean and then maybe getting to the edge of a beach or, maybe touching with your finger. And then the next time you went, you'd put your toes in the water. So it's,
Exactly.
because people get understandably confused. Like if like somebody asked the other day, they said, I'm going on a trip and, I'm going to the airport and, flying someplace. And I kind of want to take a wheelchair through the airport to the plane because it's really big. But then is that reinforcing to my nervous system that the airport is dangerous? Then I
Mhm.
think it just depends on where you're coming at from this. Are you
Yeah.
getting the wheelchair because you think your body is broken and physically can't do it? Or are you getting it because this trip is so many new things you've never done? You haven't driven to the airport. You haven't been in an airport. You haven't been on a plane in a long time. You haven't done this big holiday. So if it's a way to take care of yourself and feel safe in that moment to gradually get into it. So yeah, I
100.
appreciate.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you going for? What's making you excited? And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes we need a wheelchair. Sometimes people need
Yeah.
medication. Sometimes people need whatever they need, and it's like,
Yeah.
and how do we incrementally move forward to more life and more joy and more
Yeah.
love? Yeah.
Incrementally. I love that you are saying that because I think
Yeah.
that is the approach. And the other piece of it, though, that many of us forget as we go through this is that we are still humans in human bodies. So we are going to need rest. And
Yeah.
traveling is exhausting for the best of us.
Yes.
So it's okay to need a nap. It's okay to be tired. And I believe I heard you talk about even scheduling rest.
Yes.
So, yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of the people I work with who have CFS, that this is a big piece around scheduling rest, even when they're in the thick of it. Still, it's like actually putting it in the calendar and having the brain become aware of like, oh, this is something I care about and this is something that I give myself and I allow myself to have this, and then also, what that even means, because rest is, for some people, when we're in the thick of it, it's like, oh, we rest, but we just ruminate in the future about how horrible things are going to be. And it's like, that's not rest, so we
Yeah.
also have to find the type of rest that is nourishing to us and allow ourselves to take it. And that includes rest from programs, from practitioners,
Yeah.
from, all of the different things. This is, even people in my programs or in my community space, it's like, yeah, it's like take pauses, take rest, like go and do your thing. Like, for some people, it's like, yes, stop this work and just, take a pottery course for a month. And that's a beautiful thing. And that is a type of rest too.
All right. We've covered so many
Mhm.
great things here. I'm loving every word of it. I'm on the edge of my seat um, and guiding things a bit with my questions, but I just want to make sure we're covering everything that you would wanted to discuss, that you use working with clients to help them recover. So are there any additional core pieces with this? And then for people who want to work with you or just want to learn more, or, how would they connect with you? What resources do you have available? Yeah, great to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I work now is I kind of walk people through this befriending ourselves journey, I call it. And so that starts with this befriending fear piece because I really believe, the fear is the root of all of it. And once we understand what's happening and how fear is impacting the healing journey, then it allows us to start to get to some of the deeper layers. So for me, we start with fear, and I have a 9-week online course that people can take. And it's really, again, incrementally. The core of it is around rebuilding trust in ourself and rebuilding trust in life and being able to begin to step forward in life and, with this deep acceptance in all the different ways that we talked about today. And then the second piece of it is around embodied movement. So around like somatics and being in the body and feeling,
Mhm.
having a pathway in our system to be able to metabolize and process what's been stored in our body. And in my journey, I found a beautiful practice called Five Rhythms, which is kind of like an ecstatic dance practice, but it has a little bit more of a container and a framework. And it really reinforces this idea of like a wave. So, again and again, it's this movement practice where you move through a wave of music that really mimics that sympathetic wave. And it's a way that it shows your nervous system, kind of allows it to remember the intelligence of, coming up through something sympathetic and then letting it come back down to regulation or rest. And so that I really, has become an important part of, I think, the practice for people to be able to have something carved out in their body where they can metabolize emotions without thinking them ultimately. Um, and then I have a community space too, where we just kind of do the work ongoing live together. So the piece for me that I think is, again, really important is around community and doing things together. And, we have all these practices or, we hear acceptance and then people are like, well, what does that even mean? And how do I do it? And so we have live kind of guided practices every week where people can come and it's like, okay, what's happening in your body today? Let's go through an acceptance practice so we can practice this together and share about it and learn from each other and help each other move forward together. So those are kind of the three different spaces I have, and I do one-to-one coaching. It's often pretty full, but it is available too. And I like to work that way, but my favorite way is to work in groups because I think there's something really special about being able to
Yeah.
have many voices. Yeah,
Oh, it's beautiful beyond words. If you're
yeah,
watching or listening and you haven't been a part of something like this with that group support, it's where the magic happens. Being
yeah.
around people that get it, that support you, that cheer you on for taking a shower, and they're so excited for you that you washed your hair, and that they get it. And also some of the most insightful people on the planet, because we are all on this Zen master journey. So you have all these incredible people in addition to your skilled and incredible coaches that have ideas and yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Of course, all of this, if you're watching, listening, will be linked in this episode description. So definitely do yourself a favor. Look at the description, check out some of those links. I would have done just about anything to have use Simona in my life on my journey. I can't even imagine the difference that would have made. So really excited that you're out there doing what you do because we need this so badly. With so many people going through this, there's no need to feel lost and like you're reinventing the wheel and that you have to do it alone. So
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's watching. I really appreciate you being here. Big hugs to you. And thank you so much, Simona. This has been, every word of this has been gold. So incredible.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
having you. Yeah.
I'm so glad.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you'll take a moment to check out Simona's resources and programs. And I hope to see you in this next video over here. Bye, everyone.